It's not time to link up with Eshomomo Imodu and Tejisu Adoye in our Abuja studios for the conversation. Good morning. How is Abuja this morning? You know, Lagos State is already waking up to its hustle and bustle, but I guess Abuja is waking up to a smooth and calm start.
Good morning, Ibrahim. You can say that again. And considering our topic for today, security and all of that, you know, some people might just say that Nigeria might be recording a progress in security challenges and all of that. But, you know, the Global Terrorism Index seems to reflect otherwise. Well, that's what we'll be dissecting this morning.
And good morning, guys. The Lent and the Ramadan fast are far gone. I think the first week is gone by, and I hope you guys are also fasting. Participate whether in the
I should be asking you, Eshomomo, whether you're fasting.
I'll tell you after the show.
Okay. Take it away.
All right, let's bring you the details. Now, thanks everyone for joining us on this segment of the program from Abuja. Now, the Military High Command is questioning the credibility of the 2025 Global Terrorism Index, which ranked Nigeria as the 6th most terrorized country globally. Now, the GTI report released on March 5 gave Nigeria a score of 7.658, moving up from 8th place in 2023 and 2024. And recorded 565 terrorism-related deaths in Nigeria in 2024. However, in a quick reaction to the report, the Director of Defense Media Operations, Major General Marcus Kanye, says the report from the military provides a more accurate account of the country's counter-terrorism effort than external sources. General Kanye notes that information from those directly involved in the situation is more credible than that from outsiders. He argued that the Nigerian military counter-terrorism effort have shown significant progress, with over 120,000 former combatants surrendering in the northeast and the recovery of territories previously under terrorist control.
According to him, and I quote, "Something is happening in my house. I'm the head of the house. I have children. I have a wife, and someone else is reporting what is happening in my house to me. Which one will be more correct? The one that I will tell you as the head of the house, or the one that is reported from outside?" End of quote. Regarding the sit-at-home order in the southeast, Mr. Kanye says residents out of fear still stay indoors on Mondays. He affirms that the military is working to free the region from IPOB and ASN fighters. General Kanye concluded by saying that troops across all operational theaters have killed 92 terrorists, including terrorist commander Abba Ali, with about 101 criminal elements arrested and 75 hostages rescued in 1 week. And for more on the 2025 Global Terrorism Index and the position of the Nigerian military, let's bring in the Managing Director, Beacon Security and Intelligence Limited, Kabiru Adamu, who joins us live via Zoom. Thank you for joining us, Mr. Adamu.
Mr. Adamu?
All right, okay. We'll come back to him shortly. I guess we're having a bit of network challenge. So looking at the Global Terrorism Index and with what Nigeria is saying regarding the successes that it has achieved in its security, would you say that, you know, it's matching up?
Yeah, no doubt there has been an improvement in counter-terrorism operations, but also there are challenges, and I think also you can't just throw away the report by the Global Terrorism Index. You just put both side by side. There's improvement, but that does not remove the fact that we have huge challenge on our hands.
Well, let's speak to our guest. I hear that he's back online. Mr. Adamu, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Good morning. It's good to have you on the program this morning.
Yeah, the pleasure is mine.
All right, let's jump straight in. The Defense Headquarters clearly disagrees with the latest Global Terrorism Index. Do you also feel that this compiled report is unfair to the Nigerian Army with regards to what it seems to be an improvement in security and the fight against terrorism?
Yeah, I think let's start with a bit of a context. The index is globally recognized as probably the foremost authority on the ranking of terrorist activities across the world. It is produced by the Institute of Economic and Peace, which is based in Australia, and has been doing this for more than a decade. Over time, definitely, its interpretation, especially the definition of the word terrorism, which, as you know, has not received global acceptance. There is no institute, as an example. Even the United Nations have differences in terms of what its members agree as to what terrorism means or not. So I think that's the beginning point. The second issue is the basis upon which it arrives at its figures, numbers. Remember, it's an index, so it uses numbers to rank countries on the basis of whether they are making progress or not in the area of terrorism. Now, for this year, it placed Nigeria number 6. In other words, the 6th most terrorized country in the world. The last ranking it did, which was in 2024, it placed Nigeria number 8. So clearly, according to its figures, Nigeria has declined in terms of its global ranking and how it's dealing with terrorism. The second thing that I think is also very important is the number of terrorist incidents or fatalities that have occurred in Nigeria in 2024, according to the index. It recorded about 500 plus occurrences in Nigeria in 2024. Now, we know, and as you know, I head a company that produces reports, especially on fatalities on a monthly basis, on a daily basis, actually. And we know that it was quite conservative when he gave this 500 to Nigeria. The reality is that the number of people who died from terrorist activities was much higher than this 500 that it gave. So to that extent, with all of these things I've said, I find the report quite instructive, both in terms of what it has provided, the pathways to radicalization, beyond the figures and the ranking. The report analyzed terrorism across the world, provided trends, including pathways to radicalization, and more importantly, in terms of geopolitical positioning of the threat from terrorism, gave regions and parts of the world where it feels there are peculiarities. And to that extent, it provided that on this.
Mr. Adamu, we seem to have lost our connection with him there. Yeah, you were talking about the reports and the perception of the Nigerian military. And obviously, just like our guest is saying, the report is from a credible institution. Of
course. But that doesn't mean that the Nigerian military isn't making an effort. I guess that's what he was trying to also say. But is it matching up to what is supposed to be? There's questions unanswered, but that is also left for the federal government to also make efforts in, beefing up security and ensuring that the Nigerian military is well equipped, to fight terrorism. Well, Mr. Adamu, I hear you're back. What would you say is the yardstick for this ranking? Is it based on empirical research or just a global perception?
So it's supposedly based on empirical research. They use occurrences of terrorist occurrences. So they gather information. Anytime there is a terrorist attack, they include it as part of a data.
Seems so. Mr. Adamu, are you there? Seem to have lost him again.
Yeah. And another worry is what are the sources of this report? Because it's possible also they are the reported cases. Probably they got their own statistics from the reported cases. And there might be some cases that are not reported, just like Mr. Adamu stated that he expects that it's something way higher than that. The figure is quite conservative.
Of course. It's definitely unreported cases because, like you heard him say, it's on empirical research. They would base their facts just on hearsay. It has to be what is reported. But it still boils down to what is the Nigerian military doing. It shouldn't be from a place of always being in the defensive.
Exactly.
If you get an information or you get a ranking, it's for you to look at this report and also improve on what you've been doing. But what is also their strength and capacity. Mr. Adamu, I hear you're back. Can you finish your thoughts on what the last question I asked?
Yeah, so I was saying that it is based on empirical research. Okay. But my worry with the gathering, because what they do is they gather data. And this data they gather from all indications, they are using third-party sources. So we don't know who or what they are using in Nigeria. Okay. And the possibility that they missed or there were errors in the data they gathered is extremely high, especially if they are saying that there were 500 deaths in Nigeria in 2024. We know that the number was actually more than that. So even though they are basing it on gathering of data, it's very possible that there are errors in the way they are gathering that data, going by the number they provided.
Okay. Let me quickly come to this. Earlier, you noted that in 2024, the report said we are the 8th most terrorized. Now it's the 6th most terrorized. Now, what exactly could be responsible for this sleep? And also, just add to that, how do you expect that the military should have approached these reports? Because there are always two sides to every issue, whether the cup is half full or half empty.
Definitely. So in my opinion, they provided a lot of reasons for the situation in the decline in our ranking in Nigeria. But there are two that I felt are very important to us. Number one, they ascribed what they call weak governance, especially the institutions of government in counter-terrorism. In other words, the things that we're supposed to do to counter terrorism. Remember, we have a national counter-terrorism strategy. We also have a policy framework on countering violent extremism. So in summary, they are saying that our capacity to implement the strategy and the policy framework has been very weak over time. The second reason they gave is mining and the conflict associated with mining. And the facts speak to this. If you look at the situation in Zamfara, the situation in Borno State, almost every part of northern Nigeria where you have the terrorism challenge, there are extractive minerals in those locations. Again, there are several other reasons they provided, but these two, I think, are the most important ones for us, especially with regards to the situation in the Sahel.
Well, Mr. Adamu, an emerging security threat for Nigeria is the decision of Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger to pull out of ECOWAS, thereby undermining the regional security efforts. How can this be salvaged, and how can Nigeria reinvent its approach to tackling these terror threats?
There are about 2 or 3 questions in your one question.
So you take them one after the other.
Yeah, the 3 countries, Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger. Incidentally, all the 3 countries are listed in the index as part of the 10 most terrorized countries of the world. In fact, Burkina Faso is the #1 most terrorized country in the world. Then Mali and Niger scored even higher than Nigeria. So clearly, the military governments in those countries, as far as the GTI report is concerned, have not done well in addressing the terrorism challenge in their 3 countries. And because of their proximity to Nigeria, that should worry us. Now, with regards to your question on them pulling out of ECOWAS and what it could mean for our defense cooperation and other security cooperation for us, huge, especially given the size of Niger and its proximity to Nigeria. There is roughly around 1,600 kilometers of shared border between Nigeria and Niger, where, again, I repeat, 1,600. So imagine what would happen to the Accra initiative, which has coastal countries. Unfortunately, none of them is as effective as it should be. So I think as a country, especially the regional hegemon that we are, we should focus on ensuring that these 2 that I mentioned, the Multinational Joint Task Force and Accra initiative, become more effective so that we can capitalize on them to reduce the vulnerabilities that exist within the region. We can't do it alone. We need our neighbors. And the only way to approach this is to ensure that our neighbors are supportive, and to that extent, we're able to go forward. With regards to what we need to do, what the Nigerian military needs to do, so this is the challenge. It's not a military issue. It should be a national issue. The military is just one element within the security sector. If you count them, there are about 27 to 29 of them and the military is just 4 out of these 27 or 29. In fact, the coordination of our counterterrorism is not in the hands of the military. There is a coordinator of counterterrorism who is based in the office of the National Security Advisor. And so the responsibility to pick this report and dissect the report and bring out the element, especially the pathway to radicalization. I keep on mentioning this. This is what should worry us. How do people become radicalized? How do they embrace terrorism? The report has provided several pathways, especially the use of cyber space. And I think we should be worried about that. When we see our youth embracing the cyberspace, we should try to understand how they become radicalized using the cyberspace. So I'm hoping that the coordinator of counterterrorism will pick this report, dissect it, and then contextualize it. A lot of what they mentioned is not really, in terms of context, it's not something we can relate with in Nigeria, but we can contextualize it and then start, if we need to amend any of our existing policies, any of our existing strategies to counter the threat that we're seeing from terrorism, then we should do it immediately.
Okay. What would you say about de-radicalization policy? Like earlier we noted that about 120,000 were said to have surrendered. And a lot of time you hear about these former terrorists surrendered and they had been de-radicalized. Now, would you say that that approach has been effective, and place that side by side what is happening in Zamfara and some other mining sites across the country? Don't you think our approach in dealing with this has been weak?
Let me start by saying that, to my knowledge, there hasn't been any empirical evaluation, scientific evaluation of the implementation of our strategy so far. In other words, the Operation Safe Corridor that you referred to, we have not subjected it to an evaluation that would now give us in empirical terms whether we are doing well or whether we're not doing well. But having said that, based on my knowledge and understanding of the program, there are successes and then there are areas that we can improve upon. A lot of these 120,000 that the Chief of Defense Staff mentioned are in the northeast of Nigeria. In other words, it appears to me that we have focused on the implementation of our counter-terrorism strategy more in the northeast of the country than in other parts of the country. And given the fact that we have this terrorist challenge in other parts of the country, including North Central and Northwest, remember the Lakurawa group is there. Yeah. There is also the Ansaru group. And then there is the several other terrorist groups, some of them smaller, that exist in this North Central and Northwest of the country. So that's one major gap. We should have implemented the national counterterrorism strategy across the country and not just focus it on one part of the country, which is the northeast. The second thing is the gap between the federal and state governments. I believe that that gap needs to be closed. Remember that the terrorists don't exist at the federal level. They actually exist at the granular level. In fact, if we can even go beyond the state government and take it down to the local government or even lower than that, our traditional rulers, everybody needs to be involved. And so where you see more of the federal government speaking about counterterrorism, and you rarely hear the state governors discussing or even understanding the contents of the three instruments that we have for counterterrorism. And I'll quickly mention these three instruments. Earlier on, I spoke about the National Counterterrorism Strategy. The second one is the Policy Framework on Countering Violent Extremism. And then the last one is our Terrorism Prohibition and Prevention Law, which was amended in 2022. So we need to make sure that our governors, our local government chairmen, our traditional rulers, everybody, the media, the market woman, the policeman who is on the street, everybody understands the contents of these three documents so that the implementation is across the strata, not just at the federal level.
Still speaking about this lack of effective counter-terrorism strategies, this is a significant challenge, and the Nigerian government has been criticized for its approach in combating terrorism, with some arguing that it focuses more on military action and not enough in addressing the root causes of terrorism. Can you speak to that?
Yes. So when I talked of the three instruments, those who came up with the strategy understood that it should not be military approach alone, that the military approach should be one component, and then the other soft approach should be another component. And so they came up with the National Counterterrorism Strategy, which essentially has a significant component of the military approach and some soft approach. But then the policy framework on countering violent extremism, almost in its entirety, is really about the soft approach. Again, unfortunately, we haven't implemented it as fully as we should. The Chief of Defense Staff has been quoted where he indicated that we are only implementing about 20% of our soft approach, which is the non-kinetic component, and 80% of.
Yep. Okay, Mr. Adamu, I think we seem to be having a challenge there. Quite interesting that our approach in dealing with counterterrorism, the radicalization has not been that effective. And I find it quite interesting when he said the states and the local government have not been incorporated into this counterterrorism.
Well, military action seems to be one angle that the government has been very strong on. And people that have observed this have said, it should take another. If you're using one angle to tackle it and it's not working, maybe you should use the softer approach, just like our guest is saying. Well, I think we have him back now. So, Mr. Adamu, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Asking a question. Has he finished on that?
Yes. No, you're kind of delivering your thoughts, or maybe you just conclude on your thoughts.
Yes, I was saying that we are at the moment, according to, and I was mentioning that even the Chief of Defense Staff said this publicly, he believes that we are implementing 80% kinetic and 20% non-kinetic, when it should be the other way around. The non-kinetic should be 80%, and then the kinetic should be just about 20%. This is what theories research has recommended. Unfortunately, we're not doing that. So going forward, I expect to see especially the federal government, take these three instruments that I've mentioned, ensure that the state governors, the local government chairmen, our traditional rulers, other influence makers within the society understand the content of these three documents so that they support in its implementation. I would want a situation where if in any market in Nigeria, let's say a market in Benin, in Edo State, a woman sees someone she believes is a terrorist, she knows the number to call, she knows what to do. Unfortunately, the situation is not like that today.
Well, economic and social factors also contribute to the challenges of Nigeria's ranking in the Global Terrorism Index. Poverty, unemployment, and social inequality has created an environment conducive for terrorism. Do you sense that the government acknowledges these serious problems?
Yes, it does. It does acknowledge it, and that is why it came up with the policy framework on countering violent extremism. Okay. The entirety of that document is meant to address the socio-economic issues that drive terrorism. But unfortunately, like we've just discussed, that document is not being implemented fully. There are, several ministries. In fact, when the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs was set up, part of the reason is to address the socio-economic reasons for the terrorist challenge. I would hope that one of these days we will do an evaluation to see how far we've gone in the implementation of the contents of that document. We've not done that as of today.
Okay. We had the SIM card registration. We also had the SIM card registration, and they were all meant to be able to help us all in this fight of counterterrorism. But when you take a look at what the former minister also said, that's about sponsors, that they have names of sponsors of terrorism. Now, would you say that we have dealt with this appropriately, rather than just look at the fighters and also look at the financiers? Don't you think that if we up our game in bringing the financiers to justice, it will help us to win this war against terrorists?
Yes, definitely, and I must comment the Bola Tinubu Ahmed administration. It seems to be doing better, well, than the other, especially previous administration. Just last week, it reeled out a number of names of persons that are sponsoring terrorism. And as you are probably aware, there is a sanctions committee which is headed by the Attorney General of the Federation. So that committee reeled out several names, and one of the names that everybody would relate to is Simon Ekpa, the infamous one that is in Finland, who is currently in detention. Of course, even the Lakurawa group was also mentioned in that. So to that extent, we must commend the Bola Tinubu administration in its attempt to designate and to ensure that those who are sponsoring terrorism are, being addressed with legal instruments that are available to us. With regards to the other instruments, including identity, you've referred to the, making sure that everyone who has a SIM card is registered. Unfortunately, we've not done very well in that regard. Till date, if you go on the streets of most of our urban centers, you can buy SIM cards, and with minimum requirements, those who will sell it to you would, request for very little from you. Sometimes it's just the money that you pay. Obviously, they have gone and registered their names, and then they are able to now sell it to you.
Quite scary. Well, let's talk about what's happening in the Southeast. In the Southeast, with the unrest, the targeted attacks, and other threats, there's a belief that political solution that will ensure the release of Nnamdi Kanu is the silver bullet to ending the conflict. Is this idea worth considering? All right, we'll come back to you. Well,
you're asking me that question.
Well, I will throw it back to you. Do you think, with what is happening in the Southeast and the calls to release, okay, and here he's back. Right. So, Mr. Adamu, I was asking you a question. I said in the Southeast, with the unrest, targeted attacks and the threats, there's a belief that the political solution that will ensure the release of Nnamdi Kanu is a silver bullet to ending this conflict. Is this idea worth considering?
So anyone who believes that there is a single solution to the challenge is just deceiving himself. There should be a multitude of solutions, and one of them is political, which is perhaps conversation around releasing or not of Nnamdi Kanu. But just relying on that alone, it's a joke. The same conditions that drive terrorism in northern part of the country are also existing. The socio-economic conditions, issues around land governance, proliferation of small arms and light weapons, perception of marginalization.
Yeah. Yeah, but my thought actually is with what you just mentioned, the proliferation of light weapons. Yeah. We have laws, but every now and then you see people, non-state actors wielding these things, and you seem to say, why is there no immediate action against these people?
There are supposed to be laws that are supposed to check.
We do have the laws.
I understand that a bill on proliferation of small arms and light weapons just passed in the National Assembly. I don't know if that has been assented to. That's also a way to check. When he was speaking, he also spoke about weak governance and the response of government. Implementation of these laws is also a key factor in ensuring that this works. Yeah. And Mr. Adamu, I don't know if you can hear me. Can you finish on what you're saying? On what you were saying?
I was saying that the political discussion around the fate of Nnamdi Kanu should be one of the elements. It will probably provide the basis to address the other issues, but then it should never be seen as the single solution to addressing the security challenge in the Southeast. All
right. We must thank you so much for your time with us on the program this morning. It was quite a robust conversation, and I just hope that, the government, sees what is to be done and, respond to terrorism to get us up off that index. Thank you so much for your time
with us
on the program.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
All right.
Well, that's it from us here in Abuja. We'll hand you back to Lagos, where anchors Etoma and Ibrahim are standing by to continue with the rest of the program.